Hallo, guten Abend, hello, and good evening. I would like to welcome you to our second to last Subnet talk of this year. I would like to announce the format first. This format is actually really simple. The objective of a Subnet talk is actually to have a dialogue within a group. Sara is going to give us a little nudge, and then I hope we're going to have inspiring conversations afterwards. She's going to talk between 15 and 25 minutes. And then we're going to have a 35 minutes dialogue afterwards. After 1 hour, we're finished. I'm Rüdiger, and I'm with Subnet. Sara will speak to us today. Sara is an interactive designer. She's a researcher at Hagenberg. And she will talk about OINC, which is odd interaction concepts. And please take it away.
Thank you. Okay, yes, so I'm Sara, as Rüdiger mentioned. I come from the Media Interaction Lab, and I specifically focus on developing approaches to designing interaction with unfamiliar technology. And OINC is one of those approaches, and I will talk about it today. It is a concept that I have developed together with Thomas Peindl, a colleague, and it is still a work in progress, so I would appreciate feedback and comments in the end. So where it kind of started from, it's in interaction design, we talk about ease of use. We talk about what is intuitive interaction. But in the end, if we start analyzing, we always come back to the fact that we have learned most of those things. Very few things are really intuitive. We find that out very obviously when we have to help our parents and grandparents with their technology. So we can talk about odd interaction when you talk about unfamiliar technology. So whenever something is new in front of us, it will almost automatically be odd just because we're not used to it. And that is one part of OINC. And the other part of OINC is to specifically look for odd interactions or specifically redesign things that we already know in our environment and making them odd to maybe find out some things that we would have otherwise missed. This is a picture that I took at Angewandte University in Vienna. It is like an entrance to a toilet, but it's about a door handle that is not meant to be opened with your hand, but with another part of your body. And some very creative person came up with this set of illustrations that shows all the possible ways that you can use this door handle, but not your hand. I assume this started during COVID, and it was just kind of a funny thing to add. But there are also people out there who actually cannot use a door handle in the same way that we do. There are people with disabilities that just live different lives than we do and cannot interact with their environment in the same way that we do. So I really like this, that it kind of started as a gag, it started as something funny, but in the end, it's also making the world more inclusive and accessible for people. So this is the intro into odd interaction concepts. It is essentially a methodology. It stems from HCI. We also come from HCI. So we talk mostly about technology, devices, tools, objects, not so much people-to-people odd interaction. And I also want to highlight that although humor plays a very big role, you will see a lot of funny things today. We don't want to limit OINC just to funny things. It's also exploring what is uncomfortable, what is critical, surprising, playful, unexpected. But I also want to make sure that we are never using odd in a disrespectful way. So it is always respectful to the people and the environment. Yeah. So this is a very rough overview of how to create OINC and how to evaluate OINC. It is heavily based on speculative and critical design. So this is also a methodology that is very familiar from design thinking or similar approaches. So we start by defining things. In OINC, it's usually about defining technology. So you start with a device or a technology. You can additionally start with a problem, but the emphasis is on technology, so the computer part of human-computer interaction. Then we iterate with OINC approaches. This is the most differentiating part of our methodology, and it is also something that I will spend most of my talk talking about. Then it is about materializing ideas. So an OINC has to somehow exist. It has to be a prototype, an artifact, a sketch, an illustration, whatever, anything that people can interact with, so that in the end, you can also reflect on the oddness as well as analyze the interaction. So, design approaches. It is basically directions or perspectives one can consider when designing OINC. And as I mentioned, it can be applied to totally new technology, or it can be used to redesign something that already exists. There's 3 main approaches, and I'm going to talk about them and show a few examples. These are not my examples. They come from various places like research, art, different kinds of literature, internet. You will see a lot of different examples. This is also from Angewandte Kunst in Vienna. It's a student project that I've seen in summer at the final presentations. And it is about challenging a social norm of rushed behavior. So it encourages us to slow down while we eat by redesigning cutlery to make it so small that it makes it physically impossible for us to just shove food into our mouth without even thinking about it. So you have to go one leaf at a time to slow down, to be more mindful of yourself, of what you're eating, of the people around you. So this falls nicely into the first category of challenging cognitive skills and social norms. I have another example that is also challenging social norms. It is a project from the San Francisco Exploratorium. Does anyone know this already? No? It's a water fountain, but placed in a toilet bowl. So, I mean, the logic is exactly the same. It's a bowl, right? It can be a sink or it can be a toilet. And it works exactly like a sink. You have your water here, you open up, you drink in front of it. And what's the problem? The problem is just in our heads. The problem is that we have an association with a toilet bowl, and that's why this feels odd. So I also like this example just as breaking what we are kind of used as convention. Then another point of OINC is reframing context. This is a student project that we did last year, or some students did, as a part of our course on uncomfortable devices. And it is a waste bin that is encouraging you to recycle your trash. So if you put the correct trash, so let's say you put glass into glass, then it's okay, it accepts it. If you put glass into plastic, then it throws it back at you. Kind of funny in a context of maybe an entertainment park or a museum or some kind of an experimental setting, but if this would happen to you in the street, this would feel very weird. So OINC is also exploring where things are placed, so public versus private maybe. Another example of reframing context is a project called TV Helmet, quite old. 1967 is when this was created. And it is, I mean, fairly self-explanatory. So you put this helmet on your head. It's insanely huge. At the end of it is a TV. Pretty odd, but we have VR glasses today that are kind of going in a similar direction. So we just maybe needed a bunch of time to get used to certain things. Because again, if we would show this to our grandparents, they would probably think this is weird in the exact same way that VR glasses are weird. But we get used to context, to changing context. And then the last point of OINC-specific things is to consider ethics. Of course, like I said, we have to be responsible always. But there's maybe also space to question what is ethical and who decides what is ethical and in what kind of way. I will show 2 examples. The first one is the password game. This went around recently. Does anyone know this? I encourage you to play this. This is really, really cool. So you have to set a password, pretty straightforward. And the system gives you like rules that you have to oblige to, also pretty standard, except it goes into infinity. you can never get until the end of this rules. So there is rule number 13, your password must include the current phase of the moon as an emoji. I got stuck at fairly quickly after this at like point 15 or 16, where I had to play chess with the computer, and then the next correct move I had to input as a part of my password. And then as you're adding things, you're also changing old rules, so the old rules don't apply anymore, and it's just on and on and on. And I like it because it's a very good commentary on what is actually happening in a digital world. So where do we fall within this? Okay, yes, security, but at which cost? And then another project that is actually just conceptual. It is 3 different robots or machines. This one is a surgeon robot. It is meant to replace people, so people surgeons. So you are still underneath this robot as somebody who needs surgery. And as we are already kind of in this frightful situation of what's going to happen with us, this robot releases oxytocin, a chemical that makes you feel more trusting. And it opens a good question of what about trust in between people and robots? Can that just be put on us, or is it a decision, or how is it going to go? Can it be established? So this is also, I think, a nice opener for a discussion. Okay, so this is kind of a rough overview of what is OINC, and then I'm going to show one example that is my project, an art project from a few years that very much inspired what I now call OINC. At the time, I haven't yet, but now I think that this project actually fits perfectly. So I'm going to explain the methodology also on this example. The project is called Speakeasy. It was an installation at Robo Exotica in 2021. And it positions itself in the time of alcohol prohibition, where the authority or the surveillance is played by voice recognition. So you need to, your point or what you want to do in this space is to get a drink. If you get recognized by voice recognition system, you get sent to jail. So you need to find a creative way to communicate to the person that is on the other side of this speakeasy a password without getting caught. So you need to find a way to somehow disguise your voice. This example is very much reframing the context of what are voice user interfaces, because instead of adapting our voices to be better understood, in this case we adapt our voices to not be understood. So we have to come up with creative ways to trick the machine. So it's also challenging a little bit our mental models and our cognitive skills. So we can, for example, sing, or we can mumble, or we can mime, or other ways that you will also get a chance to come up with in order to trick technology. So I also really like this concept of tricking technology, not in a criminal hacking sort of way, but in a way of maybe understanding technology better by exploring also its limits and also what it cannot do and why and where are we among all of that. So here I have 3 examples of tricking or not tricking technology. So the first one is a failed example, as you will see.
Pack my box with 5 dozen liquor jugs.
So this was the password that got recognized, and I got detected, and my picture got sent to the voice recognition police. And here's one way that you can disguise your voice.
Pack my box with 5 dozen liquor jugs.
And I'm going to show one more example that I really like just for its creativity, because this was shown in Austria. I speak English. and somebody realized that I actually come from Slovenia, so I probably also speak Slovenian. And they opened Google Translate, put in the password in English, get it translated in Slovenian, and then a robot voice that read it out for me to understand it, but the system, of course, didn't.
Zapakirai mojo škatelu SPT mi dukati alkohol ne pijače.
So these are some of the creative ways. You can also try it out on your own. This QR code should work. It doesn't work so well on my Chrome. So I have a phone here that I can pass around. If anyone would like to try it on this for sure works. No? You don't want to try. So this will work for sure. This is the password. And you need to find a way to not get recognized.
How can it recognize me if it doesn't know me?
Of course it doesn't know you.
Yeah, but how without being recognized? How does
You need to disguise your voice, so it doesn't recognize the words. Cool. Yes, this is the idea. So it worked. Yeah, it worked. So everybody else is also welcome to try it if you want. This is here, and it will stay here for a while. Let me just turn this off, okay. Okay, so the outcomes of this project. So we can learn a lot more about a technology by exploring its limits. So basically finding out what doesn't work, what doesn't get us recognized, means that we probably understand voice recognition systems slightly better. And it also discusses potential downsides of technology or our interaction with it. In this case, the potential surveillance of voice recognition systems. I guess this is already familiar to many of us, so I probably don't have to go too much into details about that. But of course, all technology, I mean, none of it is really neutral. It might have an agenda that isn't really in our best interest. And now back to OINC as an umbrella term. I can't really talk about outcomes of OINC because they're so specific to each individual project, but I can talk about desired intention. So the point of why we are doing OINC, or why we are trying to do OINC, is to discover potentially novel interaction techniques. So for example, the illustrations at Angewandte Kunst, they went in a really creative direction and figured out some pretty novel interaction techniques, and consequentially made interaction with everyday controls more inclusive and accessible. And then also reflecting on technology and potential ways to improve it. So by exploring its borders, exploring where it doesn't work, we can maybe figure out how to fix it, how to make it better. And on the other hand, reflection on society, people, and behavior. So we have in human-computer interaction, we have humans on the one side and computer on the other side. How can we make them come together in a more responsible, more sensitive, more gentle way, more sustainable way? That's it from my side. You can follow OINC on Instagram. There's not much happening yet because I just opened it like a few weeks ago, but there will be happening a lot of things. We have some cool stuff planned, and my email if anyone wants to talk more about OINC. And as I said, I would now very much appreciate your thoughts and comments on this, or questions. That's it from my side. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sure.
So when you're doing this art interaction concepts, you're actually trying to look at usability from a different point of view and trying to use irritation in order to find a clearer picture of what's actually happening. Is it correct?
Yes. I would not call it irritation. I would hope that you are not necessarily irritated by it, but I hope it does put you a little bit out of your comfort zone to sometimes maybe also, yeah, discover something that is better, something that you just didn't consider because you didn't put the question upside down. So the point is, yes, to look at things from a slightly different angle.
Okay, no, but I used irritation in my method, like anything which is not seamless is irritating. Thank you. Anyone else? Tja, ja, natürlich. Das kann ich schauen.
So, what's the actual outcome of the process? The process itself, where you explore the interfaces, or something that you find out at the end of your process that you are going to show? Is the methodology the process itself, like when you sit in a room or in an ideation lab and try to figure out odd interactions, or are you doing this to come up with one odd interaction that is a final product or something?
I see it a lot more as a process. So as something to maybe give as a tool to everybody else to consider as well. Of course, I would like there to be an outcome at the end of every different process that people go to that is maybe, like I said, more inclusive, discovers a new interaction modality. But even if not, I think that just the process of thinking about things upside down, of how to make things odd, it just allows for a lot more playful, open, free exploration that might lead you somewhere that you haven't considered before.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I really enjoyed the examples, and I'm wondering if now a designer wants to design OINC or wants to create odd interactions, what would you suggest? Like, what are maybe implications or things to consider when starting a design process, as now the examples were more kind of applying it in hindsight on existing projects? So are there any guidelines or, I don't know, materials or anything where you see OINC more applying than others?
This is going now more in the future direction that I haven't talked about yet. Yes, we are, it doesn't exist yet. Right now it is like the framework of how the methodology could look like, where we defined these approaches. And we are currently thinking of designing like maybe kind of like a game sort of a thing, where maybe you would get specific prompts that would be technology on one side, users on one side, and probably some kind of an odd adjective in between, where you would kind of start connecting things together, maybe just open cards and they will open in very different order each time. And then you come up with a starting point that then you can go into whichever direction. So this would be something that we are thinking about as a next step, yes. How can we make it more as really a kit or a tool to give to people, okay, this is how you do it, let's try.
I feel it could be applied to materials, like thinking kind of an odd material library or of sorts. That's what my first association was. If everyone would collect odd materials and then having sort of a box where you could pick from and then create odd interactions with the materials.
That's cool.
That could be an odd material. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could envision more things that are, for example, ephemeral, like that disappear or that you can't grasp or that behave in unexpected ways, where, I don't know, they are changing the shape, but then also the temperature, I don't know, have like kind of an unexpected feature, or intersecting different materials and creating new materials, or edible materials or things like that, where you don't expect you could eat a prototype, but you can actually, something like that.
That's a nice idea, I like that a lot. That's very cool. Yeah, thank you for this input. This is a very good idea.
Okay, I was wondering, how did you end up with this kind of approach to interaction design? Like, why did you go that route? Like, normally you go forward and you have a prototype, and then you just try to improve it, don't you?
Yes, exactly because of that. I feel like, okay, I mean, obviously, technology in our everyday lives is steeply increasing. It is more and more in our everyday lives. So our lab is working with smart textiles. So we're also thinking very much about the smart home. So it's bringing it very close to our body, our everyday lives, our kind of intimate space. And then it also opens the question of how do we interact, how do we design interaction with this unfamiliar or novel novel technologies. So this is also what I do in my everyday life. I design textile interfaces that are as intuitive as possible to use. But what you end up with to make it intuitive, easy to use, is that you take modalities from something else that already exists and you just paste it onto that. And maybe it makes sense as a first step, but I think it's also a little bit frustrating because it doesn't take the essence of what this material is. So to specifically stay with the example of smart textiles, I got a little bit frustrated of putting surface gestures onto textiles because we know surface gestures, you know how to dial, you know how to pinch and zoom, but that's not textiles, right? Textiles can be pulled, they can be stretched, they can be twisted. So where are all of those interactions? So OINC started as kind of a push to get you just to think slightly differently about how we design interactions. It may not end up as odd, but I think it's a nice way to just push you out of your comfort zone as creators, as designers of interaction.
And to what extent do you think it has to do with a fresh sight or first sight onto something? Because I guess, from my understanding, it's like the longer you have a process running, the more you follow into certain, it's like a river. Like in the beginning, there's a stream, and after a while, there's a bigger stream, and then they have a river. And then once the river is there, it's really hard to move it. And so if you have certain interaction designs and you keep on using them, but you never really have then this view of a canvas, of an empty canvas, I would assume. So do you ever think about that you're trying to find the white canvas again?
Yeah, this is a good question. I mean, in research, and you are also a research group, so maybe we are actually the people that have the most empty canvas, because this is actually a very good point. This is the question, do you stick with something that is already familiar and we just get more and more and more used to it and then you can't change it anymore? Like the QWERTY typeface that we have here, we just got so used to it that we can't change it anymore, but does it make any sense? Or you go the other way around. Or you make it odd as a first step, but it makes sense. And we also get more and more and more and more used to it. And at the end, it still makes sense. So it's just two different approaches. I'm not sure what makes more sense. It probably depends. But I would like to think that maybe let's start with odd first and then get used to something that makes sense.
Then I'll continue.
I mean, you can also all try the speakeasy example if people are curious on how you can trick voice recognition. It's a pretty fun system, actually. Just saying.
What was your most positive experiences with this process approach? What were the projects where you thought you really achieved the possibility of looking at something differently?
So, like I said, it is still very much a work in progress, and I hadn't had a big chance to really talk to people about it. We will do a workshop in November where we will actually put OINC into public space for the first time. And at that workshop, we will ask people in one day to reuse an object that they find in a flea market to make an odd interaction out of it. And that will actually be the first time where we will see how people in reality interact with OINC. So I don't know yet, to be completely honest. I have examples that I found in literature. I have my own examples, but I think we always look at our own work slightly differently. So I'm very curious how it will be when I put this out in the wild and what will people do out of it. And maybe I figure out in the end that it makes totally no sense. We'll see. I'm open to that as well.
Any last question? Yes, please.
Do you or did you already come to a logic or a system how you approach something odd, like do exactly the opposite of what you usually would do? If you turn it on, this time try to turn it off. If you have to listen to something, do the opposite, talk to it. Or so, is there a methodology or a logic how you approach these odd interactions?
Not so specifically yet. I guess this would be the first step, do the exact opposite. But we are working on a different project as well that now reminded me of this. So we are working on defining what is uncomfortable in uncomfortable devices. And we have also realized that uncomfortable is not just the opposite of comfort. And I think that OINC is also in the same way. You can't just say, this is easy and intuitive, and I turn that around and then it's odd. I think there's a huge variety of what things can be. Maybe it is a first step, but I'm thinking more in this direction of the game that I mentioned, that you kind of get prompts of maybe things that don't usually belong together. And then you start thinking about, okay, what if I consider this? What if I consider this different technology, this different type of user, this different adjective, this different process? Where will I end up with?
So then odd doesn't mean opposite. It means something like, is there a definition of what odd is? Is it?
There is a definition of what odd is.
Not even.
Odd is differing markedly from the usual, ordinary, or accepted. That is odd.
Okay, so it's unaccepted or out of the norm, something like this.
Yeah, the word that is closest to me is to explore the unconventional. To not just take things as we're already used to them, because there are missed opportunities if we just stop there. Maybe sometimes it is the best way to go, but I think it's not the best way to just stop there. And OINC is, giving you a different push on where you can take this.
Would you describe the process as playful?
Absolutely.
And as creative?
Also, yes. I see it
as artistic?
Maybe also, yes. I see it very much as a game, actually. I think playful was the exactly correct word. It offers free exploration for you to maybe discover something or not. But for sure, playful is the right word, yeah.
So if there's no last question.
There's a question there.
Sorry.
I just wanted to know if you would also say that you can do OINC in... okay. I just wanted to know if you could also do it in spaces. For example, I don't know, if we go with do the opposite, if you could go to a library and then instead of being quiet and reading, you just read aloud and dance to that or something like that. Would that also be in the definition of OINC, or?
It would not be, because it's not interaction with technology, but the general idea is going a little bit in the correct direction. So I also have an idea for a festival that is happening in Linz every year. It's about public space and open technology. And I want to do OINC in public space specifically, like hacking technology in public space. Not really hacking, but how can you make a traffic light more OINC? Or a lamp, or I don't know, anything that we find on the streets in public space. So this would also be one way of exploring the things that are already there. How can we make that more odd? And I mean, always the question is, in the end, does anything better come out of it? So did we discover anything that now maybe makes our city more accessible and more inclusive, for example?
So to the context of games and odd interactions, isn't it especially in this context that if we play it for the first time, we still adapt and perceive this seemingly at the beginning odd interactions as normal and as the kind of regular interactions in this game fairly quickly compared to odd interactions in other contexts?
That is a very interesting point, yes. That is a very interesting point. Because also, like, when we go to galleries and stuff, we also expect things to be slightly different than they are in public space. So I guess the point would be to just put it as a starting point into different contexts. So it will always be a playful approach. I think it doesn't make sense to change that, but I think as soon as you're putting it in more serious spaces, it automatically becomes something different. So if we play it here in this room, that is already very creative and everything is going on, versus maybe on the street, versus maybe in a governmental building, versus in a lab that is doing AI research. It's all very different contexts. But it's a fair point. I wonder how it would change. It probably would, yes. Yeah, thanks for that.
Okay, any last questions? If not, then I would like to come to an end. And I thank you very much for spending time with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.